It is going to be a very, very fun show tonight, Raj. So
Yes.
we're
We
already
have
getting like,
somebody in the house that I think has been anticipated by some of our viewers, especially Big Mike. So we are
yes.
looking forward to tonight's show.
All right. And to do it correctly, we'll do this. We'll be back in 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a little technical difficulties right before we went on there with some stuff
Okay.
with X. So I had to shift that over. So all right,
Gotcha.
Raj. Fun show tonight. No
Yes.
SEC media days are going on, so we do expect to get some
Oh
reports from
yeah.
that next week. We'll talk a little bit about that. Is it true that they've been asking you to show up like every day, SEC media days, and you've just been kind of like, hey, I got to
I
work and stuff like
I
that?
have received a couple of calls and a couple of texts, but I told them, listen, I've got a 9 to 5. Then I got to come home and spend time with my wife and kids. So I
You
just,
have to spend
it's
time with your wife and
important.
kids, or you want to?
Yeah, apparently when you do this marriage thing, you have to spend time with the family, blah, 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 whatever. I'd rather be at SEC media days, but oh yeah, just in case my wife's watching, love you. So
All righty. Well, without further ado, or with further ado, whichever
yeah.
one you want. Um, Special guest tonight, as far as our takeover series, our summer series that we've been doing for the whole series. We have a Colorado person in the house. So Raj, as usual, the two truths and a lie. You're gonna have to figure this one out.
Wait,
Okay.
okay,
This is the man. You probably already know this one. This is the man that brought Dion to Colorado.
I knew it. Oh, sorry.
I feel like,
Okay.
yeah, I feel like that's probably an easy one. Yes, he actually herds buffaloes on the weekends, and if they get out of line, I've actually seen him wrestle one to the ground. I'm just saying, okay.
Okay.
And in a recent
Okay.
practice, it was proven that he is faster than Dion, can throw a football farther than Shador, and was better on both sides of the ball than Travis Hunter.
Wait,
Welcome
is
to
he
the
faster
stage.
than Dion now or faster than Dion was in his prime?
Both. Boom. Welcome, Kevin Borba, to the stage, sir, of Locked On
Wow,
Buffalo. How are you
Kevin.
doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing good. High praise,
Man.
lot of hype. I wish I could live up to. I think I could outrun Coach Prime now, maybe. Now that he's scored a few toes, and I did see him throw up 225 with ease. So I'm a little worried about
About that one.
how athletic he still is. But thanks for having me. I love all the kind words you said about me.
No problem. No problem. Like it's like Raj said before we got started. This was we started the summer series and we've been inviting different teams on, blah blah, just to kind of get different perspectives. And yours was probably one of the ones like either asked for most, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And if Big Mike shows up on there, you'll see he's one of the guys who's like been touting Colorado kind of since the beginning, especially since Dion on there. So when Raj and I were talking about this show to start, it was like, I don't even know where to start with Colorado because you could start like in 20 or 30 different places. But I mean, it feels like it's been a roller coaster ride for you, like at least for the last year and a half, right?
Yeah, I think the whole Deion Sanders experience in Boulder is one of those things where college football didn't need to be more popular, but it definitely took it to a whole other level. I'll tell you guys a little bit about me. Like my family's not really into sports. My girlfriend's family, her dad's from Africa. They're very Portuguese family. They're not really into like American football. And like I have them asking me about Deion Sanders. Like everyone knows who Deion Sanders is. Like they care. He brought in like a whole new demographic to college football. And so with that comes a lot of fandom, a lot of craziness, and a whole lot of fun, I would say.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Were you, and I tried to go back and look to see what your reaction, what was your initial reaction when Dion was hired?
My initial reaction, I was shocked. So the Locked On Network asked me to host the Colorado podcast after he was hired. Because I was covering Colorado, or I was about to start covering Colorado once he was hired for Athlon. Okay. I realistically thought USF had his name all over it. He's a Florida guy. Okay. Obviously, he has Florida roots, and that just made too much sense to me. I'm not really familiar with the geography of Florida, but I was like, hey, he's from Florida. He likes Florida. USF is in Florida. Yeah. So the math was math in there, but obviously he wanted a bigger challenge. He wanted to try something new. And I think everyone was shocked because Colorado, which I had a friend who played football there, it's not really like the most relevant program. It's not the Alabamas of the world. It's not the Texas of the world, Georgia's, whatever it may be. It's a program that for at least most of my life, I'm 24, Colorado has kind of been near or around the bottom or at or near the
now,
bottom.
it used to be traditionally, but like you said, most people watching right now have no idea.
Right. So like when I took over covering Colorado, I obviously did my research, and like before I was alive, I was like, oh, they were a power. Like they were winning titles. They were winning Heismans. Like that's just not the Colorado I grew up knowing. I grew up knowing the Colorado that would get beat up in the Big 12. I grew up watching the Colorado that would get blown out on the Pac-12 network. So it was just a really shocking, I would say, move because you don't associate someone who's as culturally impactful as Deion Sanders. You guys could attest to this more than I can. He's a cultural icon, and you just don't think Boulder, Colorado, Deion Sanders. Like you just don't you don't think they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So as opposed to Deion, what other names were floating around there when the coaching search was going on? Like who did you think was going to get the job?
Realistically, I was looking at names like Tom Herman. He's at FAU right now, and I kind of thought he would be an interesting name for Colorado. I think whether Texas fans want to admit it or not, he did have some bright moments in Austin. Now, it wasn't, I think when you're at a program like Texas or even Alabama, like you guys are donning the gear, there's different expectations, and he just wasn't reaching those expectations there. But I think he could have been the perfect program builder at Colorado. I also think Matt Rule would have been an interesting name. Obviously, he ended up at Nebraska, but he was someone who had a lot of success at programs like Baylor, Temple. So I was looking at guys where it's like they had success at, I want to say, smaller programs, but not the biggest programs. And I was just like someone who kind of splashy, but not, they need somewhere to land on their feet because obviously they both had sour taste in their mouth. But obviously they went in a completely different direction. So good on Colorado for taking that swing because it wasn't really like a swing that I thought they had in the repertoire.
I think it worked though, to your points from earlier. I mean, Deion brought a lot of attention to the program. I mean, from what we heard, tickets were selling out, games were sold out, etc. I mean, Herb and I were staying up as late as possible watching games, and one I can specifically
we're old,
the Colorado
so
State game. Yes. We're old. So staying up to like the Colorado State game ended at like our time, Central Time, which is like after 1, wasn't it? I think it was after 1 in the morning. We were watching that game, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm glad it's over." It's an exciting game, but I'm just so glad it's over because I'm so sleepy. I'm supposed to be bed like 2-3 hours ago, but no.
And if you had told me I'd stay up late watching that Colorado State game, I'd have told you were crazy.
Exactly.
That's the kind of impact he has, and I mean, even for me, I'm 24. I'm like, okay, it's getting a little late over here on the West Coast. I'm like, let's wrap it up. I'm like, another overtime, awesome. But yeah, no, I think realistically, you just have to look at the overall impact he has on everything, right? People are talking about Colorado. I saw this post the other day, which obviously social media is not the best judge of this, and playing for clicks is a whole argument out there. But a kid committed to Colorado, and his social media post had 100,000 likes. 3 other kids, it was like Oregon, LSU, and I think Baylor was the other school. It was like 10,000, 7,000, 5,000 likes. Like people care about Colorado. He's boosted the economy there, which is like a really like random fact, but he's boosted the Boulder economy. He's increased, or I don't want to say he's the reason, but they have had an increase in diversity applicants. So everything around Boulder is changing. Everything around college football is changing. And I think there's more to Deion Sanders that meets the eye. I think we just get caught up in the coach prime of it all.
Agreed. Yeah. Let's get a couple so that's Big Mike to run in. That's his new channel, his new podcast, but he's also the like I said, the Colorado champion. So later this year, we always do like little conference previews, and we're SEC, so we do game by game predictions for SEC teams. Mike is taking on Colorado, so that tells you how important it is for there. So good evening to Lady Alpha.
Good evening, Mike, Lady Alpha. My good old friend Dave.
Rod is a LeBron fan and Dave is a LeBron hater. So, when you see the comments.
Every time Dave jumps on, regardless of what we're talking about, he says something negative about LeBron. And like it was weird at first, but now it's just like his way of saying hi to me. So like I get it. Okay.
Dave, I'm a Lakers fan. You better look out. We're trying our best here.
We'll give y'all a couple minutes definitely for Lakers later on. And then there's Kat, one of our Kat moved where did Kat end up? Colorado?
She moved
right?
to Colorado, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know if she's in Denver or somewhere else, but I think she moved to Colorado.
Yeah.
Or
she
is
was
moving.
on
I'm
the
sorry.
she was on the East Coast, and now she's in your neck of
Yeah.
the woods. So I don't know if that's the Dion effect. Also, I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it overblown? Because this is something that I've said on multiple shows. So if I'm dumb, just don't make me look too dumb. Did the Dion effect help Colorado end up in the Big 12 when the Pac-12 was kind of failing? Because that was
I think it did. I think like there's probably a lot of factors. Like they're technically in the Denver market, so that's in the media rights world, that's always important. They care about your market, but they care about your brand. Another program that I cover closely is Stanford, and Stanford, as we all remember, 2010s, 2015ish, they were producing Heisman finalists. They were going 14-1. They were pretty much the staple of the Pac-12 up there with Oregon. And then the past few years, they've fizzled out. They've gone, I think, under 500 the past 3 or 4 years in a row now, and they just aren't the same program. And they ended up in the ACC, but I think people forget they ended up in the ACC like a second before their season started. Like it wasn't like the Big 12 was like, hey, come on over. They wanted to go to the Big 10. The Big 10 was like, not this time. So I think having Deion Sanders was really, I won't say like the driving force, but it definitely helped, because I think in college football, I always say this on my show, you can either be bad or irrelevant, but the two things you can't be is bad and irrelevant. And that's where Stanford was at this time. I think Troy Taylor, their new head coach, will turn things around, but Deion Sanders had Colorado relevant. And like, imagine not taking a chance on Deion Sanders. We don't know if he's going to stay for how long. We don't know if he's going to work out, but why not try to maximize those views while you can? I mean, it's a viewership world, and I think he played a big role. I think the Big 12 kind of liked his forward approach to, and Colorado's in general. They got aggressive. Colorado was the first team not named USC or UCLA to be like, hey, we're going to leave. So I think they like the aggressiveness.
And I think that's huge, by the way.
Yeah. And it got them a little extra bonus money from the Big 12. So it worked out in their favor. And I think having Deion Sanders was a factor. I won't say it's like the main reason, but it's definitely a factor.
Yeah.
As far as, and I know you just mentioned him staying or leaving, if let's just say, this might be a two-part question. If Deion is to have a good season this year, maybe next season, how long do you actually see him at Colorado?
I talk about this. I talk about this all the time, and I did a whole segment dedicated to like which schools, if I were Deion Sanders, which obviously I'm not. I'm 5'7", Portuguese, and not nearly as athletic as him. Hey, he dominated the NFL. I'm dominating my slow pitch softball league. So
I feel like those are on the same level, though.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
But I talked about what I would do if I were him, like what jobs would entice me. And Texas A&M was one, and that job is not going to be open for who knows. Mike Elko could be the guy for 10 years, 3 years, who knows. Florida State was a job that I thought maybe down the line could be his job, but Mike Norvell took them pretty much to the playoff. They should have been in there, according to some people, otherwise disagreed, but they were a playoff caliber team.
Agreed.
That was another team that I thought. You look at TCU was another school, right? But then it's like now they're in the same conference. So is that really an upgrade? And so Florida was a school. I think Florida is the one school where I'm like, if it doesn't work out for Billy Napier,
it won't.
And they have an absolute bloodbath of the schedule.
It's bad. They have going to get worse. So
they're not doing well in recruiting. I think they have a pretty rough schedule this year, and I feel like I want to say Herb shares the same sentiment. I feel like this might be Napier's last year. I mean, I don't know where they're going. And Florida, it seems like Florida has been losing a lot of recruits over the past few years too, going just about anywhere but to schools in Florida. So I don't think Napier's going to be there that much longer.
That's a school where it's like, does he? Because it's in Florida, right? But does he care about his school rivalry? Obviously, he went to Florida State. Does he care? I don't know. Like, those are the few schools where I'm like, those would make sense. Because you look at the landscape of college football right now, and there's not a lot of major jobs that I foresee opening. And I don't see him jumping for another Big 12 school, because there's really no Big 12 school where it's like that's a considerable upgrade. And so I think realistically, Colorado, they let him kind of do his thing, which I don't know if a lot of programs would let him do his thing. I think a lot of major SEC programs have boosters and people who are tossing the bag in there here and there. And those people want you reporting to them. And it's like, does Deion Sanders report to people? I would imagine no. Like, I don't think he's like, hey, Steve, like, this is what I'm doing at the wide receiver position this week. Like, I don't think that's his thing. I don't think that will ever be his thing. And so I imagine unless there's some crazy offer out there, I feel like Colorado's a good place for him. And I don't think the NFL,
Yeah.
I don't think he's interested in it. I think he likes inspiring the next
I don't think so
generation.
either.
I agree with
I
that.
think he likes kind of, and this is, I mean, a lot of people do. There's like a power if you're a college football coach, right? In the NFL, you're basically a coworker. So there's a little bit of a difference there.
Yeah.
Yep.
The guy who's
That's
making
true.
like 50 million is not really always listening to what you have to say anyway. You can't,
Right.
you can't approach them.
No matter how much they respect you as a player, there always comes a point where it's like, dude, I'm the best in the game right now. Like, I know what I'm doing. Like,
right.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And I think, I mean, they're like you said, the teaching aspect, I think that does appeal to him a little bit more. And some of these guys, once they get to NFL, they're ready to tune out coaches anyway. So I don't see him as a NFL coach. But how do you like then with Colorado going to the Big 12? They lose Oklahoma and Texas. My personal thought was there's a huge opportunity here to kind of be like the new kings of the Big 12 if he gets it over. How did you feel about their opportunity moving into the Big 12?
Yeah, I've always compared their experience in the Pac-12 as like the new kid at school that never really fit in, where it's just like they never found their click. They never had a rival. They were never like a priority in the Pac-12. My first job out of college was at the Pac-12 networks. And so the games that are on the Pac-12 networks are usually outside of the one time that you have to play a game on the Pac-12 networks are not the marquee games. And Colorado was on the Pac-12 networks a lot. And so they were just never a fit there. They didn't have a rival. They weren't the most popular.
That was a weird move, to be honest.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And the Pac-12, honestly, the past few years, whether people in your guys' neck of the woods want to admit it or not, it was deep. It was deep as hell. Like, it was hard to win games there. This past year was tough. And so
last year was one of the best. No, I went on record and said it figures that they would fold up like during their best
very
year.
Pac-12.
You know what I mean? Like it didn't make any sense. Like they fumbled the bag.
So
really
the Big 12, to your point, I think it offers them new opportunities. It's like there's new programs with them. Are they going to form a rivalry with UCF? There's no clear cut, like this is team A and everyone else. Like there is no Oklahoma because Oklahoma ran the Big 12 for the past decade. Texas was the biggest brand in the conference. They don't have that. And so Colorado can be that. Now, obviously, there's a lot of things that go into being the biggest brand and the most successful team, but they have that opportunity, as does every other program in the conference.
I agree.
I guess who do we think would challenge him if there was a challenge? Would it be Utah? I guess it depends on how good Cam Rising plays and does he stay healthy.
I think it would be
other
Utah.
than that, I mean, Oklahoma or maybe Oklahoma State. I don't know about them. They made it to the championship game last year. I don't know how well they'll do this year, but Utah's the one that comes to mind, and we'll see how that pans out.
Right. I think you got to look at Utah. They just have the most success and in terms of like this group, I would say, and they're hot right now. Like they return one of the best rosters in the country. They added a lot of talent at wide receiver. Like they're just really good. And then you look at Kansas State, I think is a staple of the conference where they're always really good. And it feels like they were always one or two games away from being in the Big 12 title game or being the Big 12 champs. And so maybe they were in Oklahoma and Texas away from being that team. So we'll find out. I think it's kind of it's going to be the group of death, when, we talk about the World Cup in soccer, where it's like, there's that one group that just eats itself up. That's going to be the Big 12, whether that helps or not. I would say probably not because that hurt the Pac-12, but we'll have to see.
But what you guys have going in your favor in the Big 12, though, is the playoff now. So you can, theoretically lose 3 games, win the Big 12, and you're still guaranteed a playoff spot. Now, that might hurt the Big 12 runner-up, because I feel like the SEC and the Big 10, they're almost basically promising both teams that get to the championship game are going. I think the Big 12 is a little shakier just because I believe what you just said there. I think they're going to beat each other up a lot. But to your first point there, Colorado, like Utah does have that on the sets, but they're not like that brand. It's like people who know college football are like, yeah, Utah's a good team. Outside of those kind of people are like Utah, really?
It's not a sexy brand. They're physical. They like to run the ball. Their coach is like an old chill white dude who doesn't really talk much. And it's just like, you don't hear anything about Utah until they're like winning. And it's like, oh, hey, Utah.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like out of the Big 12, the only 2 coaches you might know is Dion and then Gundy from Oklahoma State. Everyone else is just kind of like super under the radar. That's why I feel like it's a huge opportunity on and off the field for Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to know the mullet. And then I would say Matt Campbell. I would throw Matt Campbell in there just because I feel like I remember 2 or 3 years ago, like he was the next mission. Like he was going to replace Jim Harbaugh was the the vibe, and now he's kind of like feels like he's stuck at Iowa State. I mean, he may think otherwise, but yeah, the Big 12 is very like everyone's at an even ground right now, and so someone just has to step up and sort of grab the conference by the horns.
Yeah. So, and this is a good little segue. So, Big Mike saying we would discount TCU because the ultimate Texas guy. I don't. I guess TCU was in the championship game. I just wonder, kind of like you said, does it feel like a lateral move or an actual move up? So that'd be interesting. But you did start last year beating TCU. It kind of got the hype train going. Where were you at after that? Yeah. And that's where it kind of started with the Big Mike love. Yeah, about that. Where were you? And then like with the start, and then kind of where it goes. How was that last season for you, and how specifically, I guess, how it started with the TCU game?
Yeah, the TCU game, I vividly remember I was on a trip with my girlfriend's family. We were in Joshua Tree, California, which is like in the middle of the desert. Just doing what people who look like me do, I guess, going to the desert for some reason. And like one of those things.
Having the time of their lives.
Yeah, like as we do.
There's so many different answers for that comment. I'm like, well, I don't know.
And no, I just remember like I was trying to explain to them like the magnitude of this win because they don't gamble, they don't care about sports. Like TCU was like a double-digit favorite. I think it was 17 points. If I could be wrong, but I think it was a double-digit favorite.
They definitely were,
on the road, and I was just like, this game is insane. And so the first game like really set it off. I had kind of talked about TCU being not the same team because at the time they had just come off their title appearance, but they had lost like everyone on offense, and so it was like, just because that's who they were last year doesn't mean that's who they are this year. Now, me being, I guess, a little too conscientious, I never committed to picking Colorado beating them, but like in the back of my head, I was like, I think they could do it. But yeah, it was just a really crazy game. And then it kicked off that 3-week run where I think Colorado was the biggest story in sports for the month of September, if I'm being completely honest. And that's not me just talking about.
You're not wrong.
Right. Like it just, everyone cared about what Colorado did. They were breaking viewership records every week. And I think realistically, their start combined with how deceptively bad the other teams were, like we thought TCU would be better. We thought Nebraska would be better. Colorado State was kind of like the one game where it was like, that's a little concerning. I think people, those first 3 weeks gave people a false sense of like, how good is Colorado? Because people were asking me to come on their shows and they're like, is Colorado contending? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure. It's only been 3 games. I'm like, that, like, we jumped from Colorado's going to suck to like Colorado could push for the Pac-12 title in the span of like a week and a half. It was insane.
Right. And one of our, he's not on here tonight, but we've got a good friend who's a Georgia guy. And one of the reasons why, and at least I think that he's not a huge Colorado fan, is there were a lot of Colorado guys getting in his mentions talking about, Colorado's going to the playoff. Have a good night there, Lady Alpha. Thanks for tuning in.
Have a good night, Lady Alpha. Appreciate you jumping in. Yeah.
They were in their mentions talking about Colorado's going to the playoff. And I was like, based on those games? Like, I mean, it's a great start. Don't get me wrong, especially coming off with a 1-win season, but let's pump the brakes a little bit.
I knew it was going to hinge when I saw a graphic comparing Colorado to the LSU team that won the title. I was like, okay, we're losing the big picture here. I was like, this is like, I don't want to take anything away from Colorado. They had great moments, right? And I think that's the problem with Colorado was comparison instantly became the thief of joy, because it was like, okay, Colorado's good now. Let's compare them to all the great teams. And it's like, no, let's not. Like, we don't need to compare them to Alabama with Derrick Henry. We don't need to compare them with Texas and Vince Young. Like, relax.
Yes.
So with that being said, with the 2023 schedule, what were your thoughts postseason after Colorado, kind of went on the 6 games losing skid? Right. What were your thoughts then? And was it kind of, I'm pretty sure it wasn't what you expected, but was the 2023 overall record kind of what you thought was going to happen, or were you expecting more than 4 wins, or where was your head at after the season?
I think my prediction for the season was always 6-6. I thought they had enough talent to sort of sneak into a bowl game, and realistically, I think they had 3 or 4 games where they lost by single digits. So like they're a play away in a few games. So I wasn't too mad at my prediction, but realistically, what the season told me was they were a mentally weak team. And it told me that Coach Prime specifically, had a lot of coaching things to learn. And realistically, their roster construction just was not good. Like they they basically took a flyer on everybody who could breathe and wanted to play college football at Colorado. Like I think had I stuck my name into the transfer portal, I might have got a DM. Like it really, they were taking everybody. And I think in theory they have the number 1 ranked transfer portal class, but I was looking at the class and I got a lot of criticism for this on my show. And I'm like, I think everyone's getting lost in the helmets of where these guys transferred from. Like I remember one guy specifically, Jaquez Robinson, former Alabama corner, actually hadn't played at Alabama and transfers into Colorado, and everyone's like, we got a Bama dude. He's great. Like we're gonna take over. It's like there's a reason, and this isn't me saying that guys who didn't play can't play well, but there's a reason he didn't play at Alabama, right? There's a reason he didn't work out as a 4-star recruit. There's a reason that a former 5-star recruit from Washington barely played at Washington. Like they were just taking in everybody, and they didn't have chemistry. They weren't mentally tough. And I think while the 3-0 start was great at the beginning of the year, I think it hurt them at the end of the year because they had no idea how to respond to losses. I think the loss, and I don't know if you guys stayed up this late because they were up 29-0 at halftime for the Stanford game.
Right? That was so weird. I don't think I stayed up that late because they were up so much.
Exactly.
I was like,
I don't blame
Colorado's
you.
got that game. And then I woke up and was like, what happened?
If I wasn't on the West Coast, I would have gone to bed. Like it was, I just had nothing to do. And so you look at that game and I was like, that's the moment their season fell apart and they were just not mentally tough enough. I think Coach Prime, for how inspiring and how energetic and how risky he is in a positive way, I think there was game management issues. That USC game stands out where they burned a timeout randomly in the 3rd quarter, I think it was, and they needed a timeout at the end of the game when Shedeur Sanders was running the ball for some reason. Like they were calling run plays with no timeouts and they're trying to drive down the field. The Oregon State game, they could have knelt and kind of just let the half expire. And instead, they decided to give Oregon State the ball back. And all of a sudden, it was a 14-point swing. And there was just a lot of moments where you look at that season, and it's like for every bright spot, there was a few, okay, we have to learn from that. Otherwise, it's going to hurt us again next year.
Yeah. It's funny, as you're sitting here talking, I'm now realizing that I watched the most Alabama games last year. Second must have been Colorado because I remember all of these moments.
I was thinking the same thing, Herb. I was looking at the schedule. I'm like, I remember watching that game. But it's hard not to watch. And I guess it just goes to the point of like how big and what Deion's done for the city and for the program. I mean, a lot of people outside of Boulder were just tuning in to Colorado games because a lot of us just wanted to see them. Shout out to Bo. Appreciate you for jumping in, man. A lot of people just wanted to see Colorado succeed last year. And statistically speaking, I guess they did because they had 4 more wins than they did the previous season. So there was success in the program, and he's brought a lot of attention to the program. And I'm assuming that it's going to carry on this year in 2024. We'll see.
We'll get into that one in a second, though. For the 2024,
that's why I kind of slowed down. I didn't want to. I didn't want to jump the gun there. Yeah.
I feel like, and I don't know if you're feeling Kevin, half the people are like, we want to see Colorado fail. And half the people like, we want to see Colorado succeed. Like, I don't know if you guys are like the underdog story of the moment or the villains of the college football. It's like, depending on who you talk to, it feels like you're both.
I would say I feel like they kind of outgrew the underdog story in those first 3 weeks. Like they were America's team. Like literally that's what people were calling them. They were calling them America's team. But I'll be honest, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm like shooting them down, but like, first of all, their season last year was a success. That was much better than what Carl Durrell would have done. Now, do I think there was moments they wish they had back? Absolutely. And I think this offseason specifically, I think there were some social media things that kind of sort of ushered that villain era in where it's like we're criticizing this guy, calling him mid, or I forgot what Shedeur said, but he called a former player
I don't
mid.
even remember him. Yeah.
Right. That wasn't necessary. There was a beef with a former walk-on quarterback where the quarterback attacked Shedeur Sanders. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt there, where he kind of took shots at Shedeur. But there's just moments where it's like, I think people want a reason to hate these guys. And I think Colorado gives them reason. Now, do I agree that they should be hated on them? No. But I mean, we live in a society where it's like, oh, I don't like this guy. So he put his left shoe on first. So I'm going to hate him because that's just how we are. Like we find reasons to be haters. And I think that's Colorado hasn't helped themselves out in not giving people reasons to root for their downfall.
So it's interesting, like that Bo's come up because Bo has a couple of shows that I'm on there with him, and one of the things he's mentioned is Shador really has kind of been running his mouth, a little bit in the offseason. As a quarterback and then as a leader of your team, like what is your perception of that? Do you think good, bad, or indifferent? And then especially like I said, as a quarterback that people can take shots at. I mean, this does it invite a rough season for him? You know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
it's a tough watch at times, I think.
I personally wouldn't do it. I'm not Shador Sanders though. I'm not a projected top 5 pick. So
Right.
if you want to talk your talk and then back it up, by all means, do your thing. But you can't. And I think we were talking about LeBron earlier, right? Where LeBron at the beginning of the season or middle of the season is like, Bronny's better than some of these guys in the NBA right now. And then he comes into the summer league and he hasn't made a 3 yet. Like me and him have made the same amount of 3s in the summer league. And I'm not playing in the summer league and I probably wouldn't hit one anyway, but like you can't, I'm losing the phrase here, but you can't basically talk your talk. And then when it starts getting rough, be like, now I'm the victim. Like I wasn't meaning for that to come that way. And like, I think as long as he backs it up, it's fine. Like, I don't mind having some swagger to you. I don't mind having a chip on your shoulder. And I don't mind kind of playing with that confidence and flashing the watch because at the end of the day, football is entertainment. And if you're finding a way to be entertaining and sort of showing off your personality, by all means do it. But if things go south, which I'm not saying they will, you can't be butthurt about it.
Right. Yeah. I agree. And you mentioned that, and I one of the ones I didn't get a chance to catch up on. I know you covered Shador's Heisman candidacy for this upcoming season. So you want to kind of recap that a little bit for us and what's your kind of expectation for him, where you think, and then even kind of into the draft because he's been mentioned already, like possible number 1 pick next year.
Yeah. No, the Heisman thing is, I made the case for. I think he's talented enough. I think he will have a Heisman moment because I think that's not really a quantitative stat that you can measure. But it's usually a quarterback, but every player who wins the Heisman has that one play where it's like, I think of this play when I think of Lamar Jackson. It was him hurdling that guy at Syracuse. When it was Baker Mayfield, it was like the crotch grab or whatever. Like whatever it is, like everyone has that one moment where it's like, I remember that. So has to have that. But realistically, it comes down to winning. And is Colorado going to win enough for him to get there? I did a whole breakdown on my show where I went through every quarterback or every winner, of the playoff era and what they had in common. So it was like they all threw for 4,000 yards. They all had 40 touchdown passes. And then the 2 quarterbacks that didn't, it was Lamar Jackson. And I think, who else was it? It was someone else, but they had rushed for 20 touchdowns or something like that. Like they all had around 40 to 50, 60 touchdowns. And they were all outside of a couple of them, again, they were contending. They all played in their conference title games. So is Shador going to have the stats? I think he will. But is he going to win enough? Because it's kind of like the MVP award in the NBA. It usually goes to the best player on the best team. And is he going to be that? I don't know. In terms of the draft, I think it's a down year for quarterbacks. It's not this past year's. But realistically, I think Shador kind of has everything NFL teams want. And I think the only thing holding him back is how long he holds the football.
Yeah. Do you
have
see a lot of?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I just curious as far as how long he holds the football and everything. I know he got sacked a lot last year. Do you see a big improvement this year, and do you expect a big improvement from the O-line this year to help protect Shador up front?
Yeah, I expect him to be, and he kind of joked about it on his live stream the other day. He was playing the college football video game, and he was saying that he's learned to throw the ball away. So we'll see if that's true. I think that was a kind of a weakness as well. I think he has that tendency to like, he can make elite plays if you give him time. And so I think sometimes he's like, if I just hold it this extra second, like I'm going to get a big play. And it didn't always work out. He was sacked almost as many times as he was during his 2 years at Jackson State. I think there was like one more sack in those 2 years combined. So he was sacked a lot. That offensive line was terrible. We'll call a spade. They were not good. They will have a whole new offensive line this year. I don't think the offense didn't help the offensive line last year. I think it really set them up for failure. But the group that they brought in this year, they brought in around a dozen new guys. They have a 5-star at left tackle. They have guys who played Power 5 football. They have guys who were some of the highest graded players on PFF. And I think they combined gave up I think it was like 15 to 20 sacks. So even if they're average, like let's just subtract 30 sacks from Shador Sanders' numbers last year.
Yeah.
We're at 23. Like that's around average, I would say. And just imagine 30 plays where Shador isn't sacked last season, and just picture what the difference could be. Maybe that's a win over USC. Yeah. Maybe that's a win over Arizona. Maybe that's a win over UCLA, who sacked them 7 times. Like that's a big difference. And I do think the offense line is going to be significantly better. Yeah, he got sacked 7 times, 3 times last year. Not great.
And this kind of question goes into good evening to Jeremy. I hope you're doing good.
Appreciate you, Jeremy.
Where do you fall in a Dion Biddle program through recruiting? Where do you fall with his use of the transfer portal versus recruiting prowess? Like where do you kind of fall in the analysis of this?
I think this year is going to be the determining year of like, does it work or not? Because like, I don't think you could go 2 years with like, because he has talented players. Like he has 2 possible top 10 picks who are playing significant roles. Travis Hunter plays both ways. Shador Sanders is a top 3 quarterback in the sport. And if you don't sort of make a bowl game at least, like what is the point of trying this again? Because we talked about it earlier. The portal, it's no guarantee that these guys are going to be good. There's always a reason that these guys are leaving, whether it was they weren't happy with playing time, they had a NIL issue, so they're coming in for money, right? Or they were a cultural problem. Like there's always issues. Now, I'm not saying you can't get complementary pieces through the portal. Like LSU had Joe Burrow. That was one of the most impactful portal gets of all time. Oregon had Bo Nix. Like there are portal gets out there where it's like that is a difference maker. But can you build your whole team through the portal? History tells us no, and I don't know if it'll change this year. Bud Elliott at 24/7 Sports, and I advise everyone to go look at this because this isn't me trying to hate on Colorado. This isn't me trying to hate on Coach Prime. Every champion since 2011, I think it is, has had at least 50% of their roster be 4 or 5-star recruits that they recruited. So right now in college football, I think there's 16 teams that have that. Colorado's not one of them. And so history tells us what you need to on your rosters to succeed, and Colorado doesn't have that. That's not saying they can't win a bowl game, but Coach Prime's talking about the playoff. He's talking about a championship, and it's like you're going against what's
worked for everyone else.
Obviously, that's what he does. That's always been his thing. He's always been a guy that goes against the grain, but will it work? I don't know. I think this is kind of like, at least for me, this is like, if it doesn't work this year, I'm like, can we ditch the portal method? Like it's not gonna. We can't just hope and dream every year for the portal to work.
And you something in there too that I wanted to kind of ask. So from the outsider view, we see Coach Prime as this big talent or big personality, the way he's recruited everything. How do you kind of grade him out, or what's your breakdown of his actual coaching ability? Because that's something that we actually get asked sometimes. And I said, I'll be honest, I'm watching the games and I'm kind of seeing what happens. I don't know if I see in-game adjustments. I don't know if it's a personnel thing. I honestly don't know what I make of him as a coach, like as far as the X's and O's. We see everything else. I don't think we see that.
That's a fair question. I don't know what grade I'd give him, because I would say he has more of a CEO role. Like I don't think he's like, I wouldn't say he's not hands-on. Like he's tutoring the safeties, he's tutoring the corners, he's tutoring the receivers. Like he knows what more, like who else would you want to go to for advice if you're a receiver on what corners are going to do to you than the best corner of all time? Like if you're a corner, who else would you want to go to than the best corner of all time? And so I think he offers like A+ insight, but as a CEO, I would give him right now a C+ at Colorado. I think the Jackson State stuff is hard to go off of because they were just way better than everyone. So I don't know if there was a lot of coaching. Now, the things I admire about him, one, he attracts top talent, and I think that takes a special coach to do so, especially to a program like Colorado. It's not your Alabamas. Like Kalen DeBoer took over for Nick Saban. Everyone's like, can he recruit? And he has the #1 class in the country. Like there's certain places where it's like people want to go there, and Colorado's typically not that program. So he's an elite recruiter when he wants to be. We'll say elite talent acquisition guy. I wouldn't say recruiter all the time, but he's an elite motivator. I think he knows the right things to say, and he's not afraid to, while he won't say it out loud a lot, he's not afraid to make changes and admit when he's wrong. I think it was after the UCLA game specifically where he was like, I'm going to replace this offensive line. He didn't like what Sean Lewis was doing as the offensive coordinator. And mind you, Sean Lewis was like the hottest name in college football after week 2. Like he was the front runner for the Michigan State job. He's now head coach at San Diego State. He left a head coaching job to be the offensive coordinator. And by week, I think it was 6, Coach Prime was like, yeah, you're not calling plays anymore. Like you're just not. Charles Kelly, Nick Saban guy, Nick Saban tree. And I think there was like a mutual like, hey, it didn't work out for us, and I don't think it worked out for you. We're okay if you leave. He's okay. He's willing to make changes, and I think that's one of the toughest things to do in college football. Like we see it with Dabo Sweeney. Clemson's kind of fallen off, right? And are they changing anything? No. Like
Right.
right. So like they
Herb
do.
and I have talked about that several times. Yeah, Dabo.
Right.
I don't know what Dabo's thinking. I don't know how much longer Dabo plans on being there, but they have to learn to adapt sooner than later, or else they're just going to continue to fall behind.
Right.
It's also interesting that Clemson is the most mentioned team in all of these little summer series things we've done. Yeah. I feel like their name has come up every single week. Yeah,
and they were ranked. They're actually ranked pretty high on the new college football game. I think they're ranked like in the
number 4.
I want to say top 10. I don't have the game.
Yeah.
I think they're in the top 10, which is strange, but
yeah.
Anyway,
I think
they played Georgia week 1, so
yeah, that'll fall quick.
Yeah. I think Clemson's an easy target because it's one of those things where it's like you were winning titles 5 years ago. Yep. Now you're falling behind. And so Coach Prime has this ability to he'll make the bold decision. Like I don't think many coaches in college football want to replace their offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator at the same time, let alone in your second year, let alone hiring someone who Pat Shurmur, I want to say he didn't work in the NFL, but he had bright moments. And then he had moments where it's like, this dude got fired by the Giants. His defensive coordinator has never coordinated a defense. And so he's willing to take chances. He took a chance on Warren Sapp, who was not a particularly popular hire, I think, because of his off the field or sort of personal life happenings.
Right. No,
but he took chances on him. I think he shows that he's willing to take those chances. And so I think for that, he's got to at least get like a B-, C+, with the room for improvement everywhere. Game management, though, is like my biggest, I would say, knock on him, because I think that's like the one thing that should be on him.
Yeah. And that's what I wanted to hear more from you, because we see it from the outside. We also don't, like I said, I'm never sure if it's his adjustments, lack of, time, because he did. You hit on this earlier, that last year was a success. And I think that's what got lost in all this. They went from 1 win to 4 wins. Like, you have to start. So you can't go from 1 to 8, 1 to 9. Like, those things just aren't commonplace. So I feel like that's a good one. All right. So before we jump into looking at next year's schedule, the last one I wanted to do, because I know you had some good thoughts about this. Can you tell which podcast I was listening to before we came on here?
Some of them, Some I can,
The Shedeur Sanders comments, and I guess Dion as well, like that Colorado's everybody's Super Bowl. I wanted to give you kind of to talk about that one, because I thought you had some good thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think everyone's misconstruing the point. Like, I think this comes back to what you guys mentioned, where it's like people love to hate them, where we're purposely missing the point here to kind of like bring them down. And when Shedeur Sanders says Colorado's everyone's Super Bowl, does he mean that Colorado is Georgia or Alabama, where it's like everyone wants to beat us because we're the best team? Obviously, I don't think that's his mindset. Like that is his mindset, but I would imagine it's not. Right. I think realistically, Colorado is everyone's Super Bowl in the sense of people care, and whether people want to admit it or not, if you're commenting about Colorado, this is a message to everyone. If you take time out of your day to comment about Colorado, to watch Colorado, to think about Colorado, and you're not a Colorado fan, you care about what they are doing. And whether people want to admit that or not, that is the truth. And so they are everyone's Super Bowl in the sense that everyone wants to beat their ass. Like, it's the truth. Like, people got up for Colorado. Oregon wanted to murder them. I think Oregon could have hung 100 on them if they were feeling rude. Like, everyone wants to beat them down. And I compare them to Texas on my show, because when Texas was down as a program and going 5-7 or 8-5, whatever, people didn't care. Like, it was still, Texas was still a meme when they lost to Kansas. Like, does anyone care that a bad team lost to a bad team in most cases? Like, do people care when Vanderbilt loses to Mississippi State? No. But when it's Texas, people care.
Vandy catching strays.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but my cousin went to Vandy. Nashville's a great place. I'm sorry, but it's just one of those things where it's like, people forget that brands matter, and Deion Sanders, whether people want to admit it or not, is the biggest brand in college football at this moment. So that makes them the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that.
Me too.
Because people are missing the point. So last year, we probably all remember one speech from Dan Lanning, right? It wasn't before the Washington game. It wasn't before the Pac-12 championship game. It wasn't before their bowl game. It was the Colorado game. So anybody who thinks that everyone's not getting up for Colorado, like, reevaluate, like, kind of just take a look at what we're saying. So
Yeah.
Big Mike
And
with his
I'm
comment, the
glad
biggest problem on the line, yeah, both sides of the ball.
both sides of the
Definitely.
ball, yeah. You know, yeah.
And then Jeremy basically thinks he's collecting talent but not developing them. So, but that probably goes to, I mean, he did overhaul the coaching staff too as well. So that probably goes to a lot of that. He said if he's a hands-off, like more of a CEO. Sorry, Raj, did you have a question before I put the schedule up?
No, I'm glad you kind of just made that comment about Colorado being everybody's Super Bowl. I'm glad you kind of put it into play and kind of, you know, laid it out for everybody, because a lot of people had, you know, you go on Twitter and a lot of people get the misconception like, oh, this is not going to be the best game of the year. Colorado's not going to be number one. That's not what he meant. I looked at it kind of like UFC fighters wanting to fight Conor McGregor right now. A lot of people want to fight Conor McGregor because it's going to be like a big name fight. They're going to make a lot of money. It's going to be entertaining. That's kind of how I looked at it when the comment was made.
Oh yeah,
so I'm glad you kind of laid it out. So
Connor's past his prime. We'll
Yeah.
call a spade, like, but I'm not a big UFC fan, but if you ask me to name a UFC fighter, that's exactly where my mind's going. Like,
right, right.
You know, like people want to go for the king, and whether you're the current king or the past king, and Colorado's obviously not the king of college football, but they are in some capacity college football royalty and popularity.
Yep.
And so people want to be like, hey, we beat you in front of 9 million people. How is that? Yes. Post that on YouTube, or do your watch celebration. Like, people want to do that to them.
Whether people want to admit it or not, when Colorado plays, you're going to be sitting around eating a pepperoni pizza watching that game.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, at our house, Brittany loves Bria Taco, so that's kind of what we go with, Raj. But thank you for your Bria Taco fan. Yeah, that's my wife.
Wow.
That's what we have to go with every single time.
Dude,
and no matter how far I have to drive to get them. So
I love Mexican food. Yeah. Mexican food is like, I could live a life off of it. I almost do.
Yeah. All right. Did want to kind of pull the schedule up. So I have 2 graphics for the schedule. I'll explain that one later. But yeah, just kind of look at. So this one's an interesting one to me because I've been listening to the talk, and like I said, specifically yours. You don't feel like they got, or and I guess even Coach Prime said the same. They didn't exactly get a layup, I guess, to start off the season in what looks like a layup to everybody else, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a terrifying game.
Did North Dakota State, did they win last year? Because I know it seems like they win every year, but did somebody else win?
I think it was South Dakota State this past year.
Okay, right.
They've won 9 titles since like 2000.
Yeah.
Like, they've won 9 titles. Like, they are, for lack of a better comparison, they are the Alabama of the FCS. Like, they run the FCS, and like, realistically, that's a terrifying game. Like, that is I'd rather play Colgate. I'd rather play Citadel.
Colgate catching strays with Vanderbilt.
Like, I mean, give me Hawaii, give me like any program out there that is like a below 500 program that's going to struggle. That's who you want to open the season with, not a team who that game you have on there's a Thursday game. So everyone's going to be watching because there's going to be no other games. So it's probably going to command like 10 million people or 8 million people. And so that's 8 million people kind of watching to be like, haha, does Colorado get their butts whooped by this FCS program? And so it's a very dangerous game, but it's also, I think, a statement game. And if Colorado wins, no one's going to give them credit for it, but they should, because that's a tough win. And I think it'll get them ready for the season, because Nebraska, who they play week 2, they open with UTEP. Like, no one cares about UTEP. So Nebraska might sleepwalk through that one, whereas Colorado is going to be battle tested already.
Yeah. And you said that you think that works to their favor, right? Because you're last year 4 wins, right? But if I'm hearing you correctly from listening to stuff, you think we're starting 5-0 this season.
I think it's possible. I do think their schedule sets them up to sort of start off strong. You get North Dakota State, which realistically, I'm not trying to shoot them down. Colorado has a better roster. Will they beat them? I don't know. Like, that is a tough one.
Yeah.
Nebraska, they have a freshman quarterback who he's a 5-star. He's all that, right? But is he ready for an environment that big where it's like
he's still a freshman? Yeah,
right. He's still 18 years old. He's probably still texting his mom asking for laundry advice. Like, he is still young. Like,
Rod still does that.
Herb still does. Yeah.
Oh, so you got you beat each other. And one point that you made too that I wanted you to be able to repeat. You also like the fact that this is game number 2 versus game number 6, right?
Yes, I think Nebraska with some steam behind them, with some experience, that's where it gets dicey. If Dylan Raiola has 4 games under his belt and he's balling, then it's like, okay, that's a little scary. But Dylan Raiola, who played against a bottom tier group of 5 team and is playing his first Power 5 opponent or Power 4, excuse me, RMP to the Pac-12. That I worry about him. Like, is he going to be ready? I don't know. And so I think their schedule sets them up because Colorado State, that's about as big of a layup as they get on their schedule. And that's going to be an intense rivalry game. The Colorado State coach keeps running his mouth. Like, I don't know why he would want to fuel the Deion Sanders army, but he is fully like wants to do that. And then Baylor's a struggling program, so they have a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
And then, like
Central Florida now has KJ Jefferson at quarterback, don't they? From Arkansas. So
I had forgot that until I was listening to his game-by-game breakdown. I was like, oh.
You probably forgot that because like 2 years ago he had a really, really good season, but I don't know what happened to him last year. He just didn't. He had a horrible season last year, and I guess that's what made him transfer to UCF. So I don't know how good
Arkansas kind of fell apart the last 2 years, I think, too, though. They were on a huge downside. So he really only had a good game against us, I think, and then everyone else was just kind of bad. So.
He was getting poor man's Cam Newton comps. Like he was up there. He was like everyone's like KJ Jefferson, next Cam Newton. I was like, whoa, where'd that come from? Yes, he's big and can run, but I was like, let's pump the brakes here.
Yeah. And
I don't know what Kansas State's quarterback situation looks like because Will Howard is now at Ohio State, so I don't know who their quarterback's going to be.
They got his name's Avery Johnson, Kansas.
And you liked him, right? Yeah,
he's good. First of all, this isn't a factor to anything. Great hair. I feel like luscious locks.
These are the important things. The important things.
No,
you look good. You look good. You play good. That's what Deion says.
Exactly. Yeah. I think he kind of pushed Will Howard out, whether people want to admit it or not. I think Will Howard was the starter, but I think Kansas State was very willing to play Avery Johnson last year. I think they used him a lot. He's super quick and can do a little bit of everything. So he might be like the dark horse quarterback.
Right.
I looked at Will Howard's stats from last year. They weren't great. He had like 21 touchdowns on like 8 interceptions. So it's not like Will Howard was doing a lot of damage at Kansas State anyway. So
So just with your breakdown, you have them, or this was an earlier one, you know. So you had them, I think, at 7-5 going through there. Has there been anything, Clyde, in the last month to change that, or are you still wanting to reevaluate maybe right before the season starts?
I would stick with my record prediction. The only thing that I would change is like the games that I have them winning, because like I look at the first 5 games and like for them to start off 5-0, like they would have to win three road games, which is tough.
I remember you said
that would be huge for them, but like that makes me a little nervous to be quite frank. But no, I think 7 wins until I see them play. It's really hard to judge a team with 40 new players. Like they're going to have a new defensive line, new offensive line. It's really hard to sort of be like, I'm going to stamp this. Like I just don't have that sort of confidence at the moment.
Right. 7-5 before, and that was it. And just for everybody, it was like you had them losing to Oklahoma State, Utah, Texas Tech, Arizona, and K-State was the original 5 losses. So
tough. Their last month is scary month. That month of November is about as brutal as it gets.
Right, and getting what you said, going 2-2 in those games would kind of get you to that 8-4 mark. Could be much better, but got to finish better than you did last year, of course.
Yeah, but if Colorado can get 6, 7, 8 wins, it's still a great program. Still progression, still making it to a bowl game. So that they're going in the right direction. So
that's what I would think. A bowl game has to be the goal.
Yeah, people are like, if they don't win 10 games, it's a bust. And I'm like, we're going from 4 to 10. I'm like, I have people in my comments all the time, and I'm like, so anything below 10 is a failure. Is that what you're telling me? We're
firing like 90% of the coaches next year because
like that's insane to me. I think a bowl game is a great target. Now, no team in college football is going to be like, we'd settle for 6 wins. Like everyone wants to contend. Like no one wants to be that team shooting for an Alamo Bowl invite. But like there's only so many contenders. And so I think Colorado realistically should be happy. Whether or not people will give them the respect they deserve, probably not.
I had to show this real quick just to show our age. This was the original graphic we had. Rob and I are both so old, we were like, I can't read all these names. So we had to go with the other.
Hey, it's okay. You know, we got to value eyesight. We got to value being able to see things properly. The reason I didn't get my windows tinted darker because I couldn't see out of the darker tint. Like You got to make those sacrifices.
Oh, I feel like that was one we definitely had to. All right. We've enjoyed this. We're coming up to the top of the hour.
Yes.
So we got you through the ringer with the questions of death before we let you go. Roger, do you want to start? You want me to start?
Yeah, I'll start. All right, Kevin. So we know you're obviously a big Colorado fan, Locked On Buffs, Locked On Colorado. If someone offered you enough money, let's just say 500. Hold on. Let's just say $500K to start to get rid of all your Buffs merch, all your Buffs paraphernalia, et cetera, whatever the case may be, and you had to take over an SEC team, not Alabama, not Georgia. What SEC team would you take over? Not Vanderbilt. What SEC team would you take over to report on? Who would you want to wear as far as merch? Who would you represent if you get the $500K? And you'd have to do this. You could start your own podcast, name it after the team, whatever the case may be with the $500K. Which team would you take on for the SEC? Not Alabama, not Georgia.
Gotcha. I'd probably take on Texas. I grew up watching Colt McCoy, Vince Young. I do some Texas content for Athlon. So Texas is kind of one of those teams where I feel like I've been through the ringer with them. Like, it's like I grew up watching, like, I was literally around 10 when Colt McCoy finished his career. And then it was like a decade of like suck. And now they're back. And so it's like, it'd be cool to sort of cover a team when they're good. I think up to this point, I haven't covered a winning team. My first year, I covered Stanford. They were 3-9 or 4-8. Colorado this past year. I just haven't. Texas, my very first year, they went 5-7. So like, I haven't covered a winning team. So it'd be fun.
So we can't invite you to like Locked On Bama until the luck changes, right?
I know.
I would watch out. I would be honest. I do some Alabama content, so I guess if there's someone to blame, you can point the finger at me.
There you go.
I'll take the blame.
At least you're admitting it, yeah.
We play a little game here we call Work, Play, Live. We're gonna name three people for you. Okay, you have to name who would you want to work with. This is your 9 to 5, 40 hours a week. Who would you play? Play is, hey, Friday night, this person, which I think this one's going to be pretty easy, but we'll see. Friday night, this person calls you up. Who you going out with? And then who you want to live next door? Who is your neighbor, the person you see every once in a while and collects your HOA fees?
Gotcha.
John Elway.
Okay.
Deion Sanders.
Okay.
Peyton Manning.
Whoa.
Ooh.
Okay. Those are tough ones. I got work, play,
that's a
live.
good one, Herb.
I think realistically, oh man, I feel like I'd want to work with John Elway just because I feel like he's a business forward dude. And like in school, if someone was funny, I would not be able to help myself and laugh. Like I would get in trouble for laughing because I just could not focus. So like if someone's distracting me, like I would not be able to focus. So I feel like John Elway, he'd probably keep me on track. He'd be like, okay, Kevin, like let's focus up here. Live by, oh man. I think Deion Sanders has a lot of outdoor hobbies that I would enjoy. I've never been fishing, but it seems fun. He plays baseball. He plays he just coached a softball game. So I feel like that'd be cool. And then I probably want to play with Peyton Manning. I think he's one of the smartest players of all time. And I just feel like he'd be like a really cool hang. But I do think that living by Deion Sanders, me and him would kind of be cool neighbors. Where
you're trying to hedge your bets here. That's what you're trying to.
I mean, hey, if he wants to buy me a mansion somewhere, I wouldn't oppose, But yeah, I think hanging out with Peyton Manning would be cool. I think he's a sneaky personality.
I agree with that one.
That's a tough one.
All right, Raj, what you got?
All right. So earlier in the show, I know you mentioned, hypothetically speaking, if there was Colorado was taking a lot of players from the transfer portal last year, and you even joked around and said, hey, if you even threw your name in the hat, maybe you could have been one of them. Let's just say tomorrow Deion gives you the call. It says, Kevin, we've got some positions open. We're going to give you some time to get into shape or do whatever the case. You probably already are in shape. I'm just throwing this out there. You got some time to get in shape.
Well,
and your time limit is
race with Deion before the show. So yeah. And
exactly.
On the weekend. So yes.
You have until August 29th to get into whatever shape you need to be in. By August 29th, if you get the job, what position would you want to play for Colorado?
Yeah, I'm probably going to receiver.
Okay.
Realistically, I don't want to run through the tackles like a running back. Realistically, I don't want to try to keep up with. I don't want to
sound like me.
I don't want to try to keep up with receivers.
After one hit, I'm out of there, man. I'm like,
across the middle.
I think I'll take a few like business. I'll make some business decisions where I'll run out of bounds every once in a while.
Yep.
Thank you.
But yeah, I think receiver. I would definitely need to get in shape, especially in Colorado. The altitude. When I went out there for the spring game, I walked to the game from my hotel, and it was kind of like it wasn't the biggest hill, but it was like a slight uphill walk, and I had to take a second to catch my breath. I won't lie to you. I was a little winded. That altitude gets you, so I'd probably go receiver just for the sake of not having to be super athletic and just be one of those Wes Welker, Julian Edelman type guys and hope for the best.
Wes Welker catching strays too.
Catch the ball, go down, or go out of bounds. I'm
exactly catching praise. They paved the way for us.
Yes.
Fellows who aren't tall like me and aren't athletically inclined. They paved the way.
Oh, Kat says she just got out there a little before. And Jeremy, we're gonna put your question up at the end. That's what we're gonna put the end with. All right. So if you had to remake Colorado's schedule, new rivalry edition, you have to pick a team that you would play every year from the Big Ten, the SEC, and the ACC. And you cannot pick Nebraska in this one, and you can't pick Texas in this one. Who would you be picking if you're remaking Colorado? And you're going to play these. One of them you'll play at the beginning of the year, one you'll play at the end, one you'll play in the middle.
For the sake of entertainment value, I think the Big Ten, you got to go new program. You got to go Oregon. It was really a shame that we only got to see Dan Lanning versus Deion Sanders once.
I like that. Yeah.
I don't know if it'd be like an even rivalry, but I do feel like there'd be enough animosity there. The SEC, let's see. Ooh, that's a tough one. The SEC, I would probably go with maybe Florida. Just because I don't know.
You're gonna get him fired, take over his job. Like that's the ultimate villain move.
The SEC is tough because it's like everyone has a rival, excuse me. I would say Florida's biggest rival, and correct me if I'm wrong, is probably Florida State. Or no, it's probably Georgia. Georgia, you're right.
Georgia.
You're right.
Florida, Georgia.
No, so I didn't really realize that until I started watching our friend's Georgia podcast. Because there's been a while where Florida's kind of been down and Georgia's been up, so you don't think about it as much.
Right.
Georgia hates Florida. So
if I went to Florida, he'd probably punch me in the mouth for saying that, for even questioning that. So I don't know. The SEC is tough because I want to go someone without a rival in the SEC. And so I would probably just go Florida for the sake. Yeah, go ahead, Roger. I feel like you got a good one.
I feel like a Colorado Ole Miss game would be entertaining. Deion versus Lane Kiffin. That would be entertaining. Right.
It's like the Kings of the Portal. I feel like they're always kind of the portal.
That would be fun.
I'm gonna steal that one and pretend that was my idea.
Hey, full support.
Yeah, the ACC got to be Florida State. Like I think Deion versus his
that would be must.
He went there. They didn't hire him. They kind of have this weird. Like Colorado has beef on social media with Oregon, Florida State, and like a few other programs where it's like all these people watch my show religiously, and they're like, Colorado sucks. And I like click on their profile picture, and they have like a Florida State logo, and I'm like, what are you doing here? Like,
right? Like, why do you even care?
Yeah. Like so, I think that'd probably be Florida State for that one.
Okay. All right. Final question, and then we'll let you wrap up, and we'll get to Jeremy's question. All right, Colorado makes it to the national championship game.
Oh.
They are playing Alabama.
Oh.
Okay. You have seats, 2 seats.
Okay.
On the 50-yard line, you get to watch the whole experience, okay?
Yeah.
But you have to bring somebody with you from this list of people.
Okay.
Okay? Herb or Raj?
Oh. Wow.
Think wisely, Kevin. Think wisely.
Okay. You know what I'm going to do? And I think both your wives
Can't say neither.
I'm going to take my girlfriend.
Oh.
You know what we'll actually do? I'll shave the beard, slap me in a stroller. I'm not that tall, and I'll get in as a child for free, and all 3 of us will go.
Oh my god! Like, how old is that kid? He just hit puberty. Okay, he's going through a little growth spurt. Just calm down.
Cat, they never see it coming. The look on everyone's face when we finally get to the list, and like, oh, it's a 2-name list. Okay,
it is a 2. I was like, okay. I was thinking like last time, even with John Elway, Deion, I was like, oh, no, you guys have both been great. I'd give you guys the seats actually, just so you guys could go. To be honest,
man, thank you.
Together. Jeremy had a good question, so we'll slide that one in. Who do you think wins the Big 12 this year?
Yeah, I think a healthy Utah is the team to beat. Good defense always. Their quarterback, I kid you not, is older than I am. And I graduated. I've been out of school for like 3 or 4 years now, and he's older than
me. And they're already asking him about coming back next year too. So
yeah, which according to Utah's compliance, he cannot go there That doesn't mean he can't go somewhere else. So he technically could go back for an 8th year, I believe, if another school would want him back. Dude's gonna have like a doctorate, but I think Utah, they have a bit of everything. They're the team that I'm most confident in. I think you look at every other school in the Big 12, I could give you like a flaw for each of them. Like Kansas, I saw someone comment, Jeremy actually commented Kansas will be tough. Jalen Daniels hasn't played a full season. Kansas State, they have a younger, inexperienced quarterback. Oklahoma State, Alan Bowman, same age as Cam Rising. Plus, I feel like they're winning in spite of him. Like they're not winning because of him. Like they are. I just don't feel like Oklahoma State's got it all. So I think Utah's the most complete team, and so therefore they are my pick.
Agree.
I wonder what Cam Rising's parents think of him right now. He's like, dude, like we know you've been in college for a while, so do we have a post-college plan here?
So because of NIL, I bet you they're okay. I think pre-NIL, they'd be like, what's the plan? But NIL, they're like, I think he's earning.
He'll love the CFL, the XFL. He'll love it.
All right, Kevin, man, tell everybody where to find you, what you're working on next, what you got coming up.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter or X, whatever you prefer to call it, at Kevin_Borba. I cover college football all over the place. I cover every team in the country, it feels like. So if you like college football, come my way. Tell me if you agree with me. Most of the time, people tell me they disagree with me, but I like to tell them, make sure it's shorter than 3 sentences. Otherwise, I won't read it all.
Yeah. I can respect
we definitely appreciate you. That was a lot of fun.
On, Kevin.
Like
Thank you so
much for having me, guys. It's been awesome.
Big Mike, I hope you're still out there watching. Now you've got to come with your game-by-game breakdown later on the year. So, Kevin, appreciate you much, man. Thank you very much. Raj, great show. We'll be back next week. We'll have some coverage of SEC Media Days. Until then, everybody have a great night. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.